If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
And with that introduction, good morning to everyone, and welcome to the August the 24th edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. So good morning to everybody. The Gatewood brothers have let us know, that is Mr. Fuller and myself, that they are at the ready and have everything up and running. So that is very good. Let me say this, and I was just informed that I did not know, but Mr. Fuller had an interview yesterday on the Carl Nelson Show. That's right, Monday on the 23rd of August. And I didn't know that, but I tell you what, after the show, I'm going to tune in to hear the interview myself. And also I was informed that the show from yesterday on the Carl Nelson Show is also up and on this website at ProducedJustice.com, where you can also get all the materials that with what Mr. Fuller will be discussing, in particular his book. So for those who wanted to know, make sure that you can tune into that, and that would be great. Okay. Let's see here as I get myself together here. Okay. To get in contact with the show, just simply dial this number, which is 516-453-9921. Make sure you depress the number 1 button, as Gregory has. Helen B. from New York City. Stan from Pennsylvania is in there. Oh, yeah. Gregory from Florida is there. Oh, yeah. They're all at the ready and just chomping at the bit to ask Mr. Fuller some questions, so we'll get to those momentarily. You can also join the chat room. Yes, the chat room. Okay, there we go. Chat room, and in there is Stanco for 777. Invisible Negro is there. Jacoby 2 Kane 2 is there, and Purdue's 21 just joined the conversation. Grand Rising, Amani, however you want to say it, is all in the house today. And they have some interesting chats, which they had last week. Very, very good. They blew it off, last week. And you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and your question will go into rotation. Okay, let me start off by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'm almost always asked about your military service, and people are always intrigued, I guess would be the word, by your military service, particularly since you were in, I believe, the Army and the Air Force, which I don't know that you can do that today, but you were. But I wanted to ask you, it was brought to my attention about a place called, or have you ever heard of, the Battle of Bamber Bridge?
Never heard of it.
Yes.
Never. I never heard of it.
Okay, let me just give a brief description. The Battle of Bamber Bridge was an outbreak of racial violence between black and white American servicemen stationed in the British village of Bamber Bridge, Lancashire, in June of 1943. The incident, which occurred a few days after the 1943 Detroit race riots, was started when white military police attempted to arrest several African-American soldiers from the racially segregated 1511th Quartermaster Trucker Regiment at the Yeode Hob Inn public house in Bainbridge. Let's see here. It continues, and it said that after the arrival of more military police armed with machine guns, Black soldiers armed themselves with rifles from the base armory. Both sides exchanged fire through the night. One black soldier was killed and several MPs and soldiers were injured. Although a court-martial convicted 32 African-American soldiers of mutiny and related crimes, poor leadership and racist attitudes among the MPs was blamed for the cause. Now, during the Second World War, Bamber hosted American servicemen from the 1511th Quartermaster Truck Regiment, part of the 8th Air Force. Their base, Air Force Station 569, nicknamed Adam Hall, was on the Mount C Road, part of which still exists now as home of the 23rd 76 Bomber Bridge Squadron of the Royal Air Force Cadets. What happened, Mr. Fuller, is that when the MPs came to town, they were in some pubs. I think there were 3 pubs. And the military police did not like it and wanted them to get out, bringing the racist attitudes from the United States over there in England. But the people of the town came against it and made the pubs black only, which the MPs didn't like, and then the riot started. It was brought to my attention for that. And you said that you have never heard of that, but have you heard of incidents in the service while you were part of the military service?
Yes, but nothing like that. In World War II, it was a lot of those incidents. I understand there was a big one in Louisiana, and there's a movie that's on my movie list called Yanks that kind of depicted a interchange of that type among black soldiers stationed in England prior to the D-Day invasion, June the 6th, 1944. And, usually it involved exchanges of violence that started off with something like black people being in a bar or something like that, where white people usually, what you might call, frequented, things like that. And incidents would happen, like it would happen mostly in any situation where people are drinking. And then a lot of things, animosities come to the surface between white soldiers, particularly from the South, and some from the North, and black soldiers. And it was English women or German women or women in some of the occupied territories where they were in France. And when black soldiers arrived there, everything usually got a little tense. And there were many, many, many outbreaks of violence, I understand, all during World War II. Now, I wasn't in World War II. I was in the Korean conflict, but they didn't even register as a war. They call it a war sometimes, but officially it's supposed to be a police action. That's what they called it at the time under President Harry S. Truman. They don't want to call it a war because people are so sick of war after World War II. Nobody wanted to even think about a war. And so 5 years after that, the Korean conflict broke out. So a lot of people said, well, let's not call it a war. Let's just say it's a police action. So, but people who were there, they know it was by whatever name, a whole lot of people getting killed.
Okay.
That's for sure.
And could that have been possible a reason why they established what is now still in place a demilitarized zone or whatever they call that between the two?
Yeah, that was never settled. I mean, that was the beginning of the end. It seems like of a lot of conflicts that got more and more convoluted. World War II was kind of clean cut. I mean, just what the objectives were and what everybody was supposed to do and why, and all of this was real sharp-edged. There was no misunderstanding about between the conflicting people. and what they were trying to accomplish and how. But since then, everything has been just a mismatch of what are we here for the most part. Almost all soldiers everywhere, everybody in uniform, soldiers, sailors, in every conflict since then. Korea, Vietnam, all the little skirmishes and whatnot in what we call the Middle East, people who are dying in these situations are saying, wait a minute, I'm not even sure of what I'm here for. Well, what's the objective? What are we supposed to be accomplishing? And so now we have three big ones now already like that, and that is Afghanistan, the latest one, and then the one before that was Vietnam, and then the one before that was Korea. Yeah.
What you just said was confirmed this morning, and you probably didn't know this, but what you just said was confirmed this morning on MSNBC by a major that was there and said it primarily the exact same thing that you just said. Why were they there and all that money that was spent over there for, why are we there? Okay, moving to a question from Jakari. He said, Jakari, the Afro-astrologer still learning. He said his question to you, Mr. Fuller, is this. Why do you, Mr. Fuller, why do you love war movies so much when you deplore violence and white supremacy? That seems contradictory to me.
What's the question?
The question is, why do you, Mr. Fuller, love war movies so much when you deplore violence and white supremacy?
Oh, because I'm looking at what has to define everybody's behavior, particularly just prior to and during World War II more than anything. That has defined the behavior of people all over the world, what they call the Big Deuce, World War II. I wasn't in it, except just as a teenager. I was, reading about it. We had to learn how to identify aircraft in the segregated school I was in Oklahoma. I knew the Zero fighter, and I knew the Mustang fighter, and I knew the B-24 bomber, and also the Short Sterling, some obscure airplanes and whatnot. We had to be able to identify them in our class because we thought we'd be recognizing these planes flying over. Japanese bombers, one called the Betty. That was a medium bomber, twin engine. And we had, what the crew members were, how many crew members it had, what guns would fire in what direction. The B-17 bomber, with about 16 guns, 50 caliber machine gun, waist gun, top turret gunner, nose gunner, tail gunner, bombardier, navigator, what their position was inside the plane, all that type of thing. We call it Big Deuce, World War II. It was a huge event. So it's a lot of things, like the caller said, they got that correct. Most of the movies I have orchestrated is just prior to World War II and all during World War II. And then a little leftover down at the bottom, like the movie, I can't think of the name of it now, with William Holden about Korea, The Bridges of Tokari.
Oh, okay. That wasn't Stalag 17, was it?
No, okay. That was about aircraft attacking some bridges in North Korea.
Okay.
And but that came in on the tail end of World War II. A lot of people talk about World War I and whatnot, but that's sort of peripheral, World War I. Everything, the whole world started changing on account of, it wasn't really what they call a world war. There was a lot of people who wasn't involved at all. Say someone who was in Peru or someone in Bolivia. They were just people in villages and whatnot, people all along the Amazon basin and whatnot. They didn't even know what you were talking about. You're talking about some world war going on. They didn't hear anything except waterfalls and
yes, sir.
Birds and flying over. They didn't see any aircraft and whatnot where they were. I mean, huge parts of the world weren't involved in any of that conflict.
All righty. By the way, that on the opening statement about the Bamber situation, that information can be obtained through Wikipedia. Just want to give a reference to that. Okay, let's move here. This comes from Lasharian, Mr. Fuller. He says this, Mr. Fuller, does the white supremacist give non-white people power to make it seem like they are equal to the white supremacists? Why or why not?
Do white
supremacists give non-white power to make it seem like they are equal to the white supremacists? Why or why not?
Oh, yeah. So they don't give them. Black people don't have any power, period. And white supremacists give black people titles of power because they know that we're title crazy. I mean, we have the title of being slaves and whatnot, and the N-word, that's our basic title. So we're going way back. I mean, collecting titles was real important. They would like to say, well, that's a professor, that's a reverend. Some Baptist preachers sometimes had 4 or 5 different titles that they would give themselves. The chief potentate, reverend, doctor. I mean, this is many titles they can load up in front of the names that they had been given. And that's a spillover from that even to this day. Black people want, give me a title. I mean, Mr. and Mrs. I mean, at a time you called everybody by their first name as slaves. That's Sam. I mean, not Mr. Sam ever. All right, that's Joe, not Mr. Joe. Nothing. Joe Jones. I mean, no, that's just Joe Jones. Or sometimes to distinguish between white and black in small towns and whatnot, they say, "Oh, you're talking about Jones, or you're talking about Mr. Jones, or you're talking about the N-word Jones." All right? Yeah. That's how they refer to black people. I mean, you had that N-word in front of whatever name they had given you as a slave, so that was your name. So once we can give them a little chance to break out of that, we just wanted titles. So the white supremacists said, "Oh, okay, so they want titles, all right. Is that what they want? They want some titles? Oh, boy, we have titles. We got truckloads of titles like you wouldn't believe."
Yes, sir.
So they give black people titles even to this day and say, that'll keep them quiet as long as, let them be vice president of this and the chief manager, senior, Mr., Mrs., this, that, and the other, and, just load them up. I mean, in front of that name, I mean, it takes you all day to get to their name because they got all these titles in front of them.
Yes,
okay?
Sir. Mm-hmm.
But don't give them any power at all that goes with that title. Zero.
All right, Mr. Lasharian, you have your question and answered, and we'll move on. Special hello to Swa. Emery Lumumba, my brother, is there. How you doing? And J.J. Keller from the UK is in the house. 2 p.m. out there. Okay, good. Speaking about that, let's go to the great state of Florida, and we're getting ready to get Gregory. Wait a minute, Greg. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, Gregory. Let's see. Come on. There you go. Gregory, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Mr. Fuller, my question is, I would like to know what you think about, it seems as though like when people of color, we get guns and weapons all over throughout the world, we just destroy each other with them. And I was going to ask you, do you think that without white supremacists coming to save us, we would be destined to just kill ourselves, it seems?
I can't quite hear because I hear a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I think you're in a truck, aren't you, Gregory?
But
I'm sorry.
Can you transfer that question?
Okay,
yeah,
hey, Gregory, he wants you to could you ask that question again?
I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller. I'm just looking at Afghanistan and how people of color, we always get guns and we savagely go after each other. So my question for Mr. Fuller is, without the white supremacists coming to save us, will we be destined to destroy one another?
Without the white supremacists coming to save us, are we destined to destroy one another? Is that the question?
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like we have guns all over, and it's just like we always going after each other, and then we have to call the police or, military to come save us. And I understand how they use a lot of this for their own good, but at the same time, it's needed. So that's my question. Thank you. And I'd like to stay
All right,
online.
thank you, Gregory. All righty.
Oh, yes, black people are trained to go after each other. I mean, that's just our natural tendency. Because we have been taught by the white supremacists, if you're angry about something, go after somebody who is weaker than you are. That's what we have been taught. And so that's what we do. So when we get mad about anything, we look around for somebody that looks exactly like us, because we can't stand ourselves, because we've been thoroughly taught to be that way. So when we look in the mirror, or when we look at another black person, we're looking in a mirror. We see an image of ourselves, and we can't stand what we see because we can't stand ourselves. So we go after anything that's similar to us. Or, in status, if it's not just a physical thing, anybody who is weak. Because we have been taught by the white supremacists, take advantage of weak people. Black people are weak people. We weren't strong people when the white supremacists came upon us and decided to start a system of white supremacy. Regardless of how we brag about our great civilizations and all like that. No. No, if we were all that great, we could not have been taken into captivity.
Yes, sir.
And we have to face that. And I just finished talking about titles a while ago. Now, the code says, and I'm going to jump right in now and say, black people have one title that stands out more than anything: victims of white supremacy. That is our official title, truth be told, worldwide. We are that more than we are anything else. And we have been that as long as there has been a system of white supremacy. So if I'm talking to a white person and they say, well, what is the title that most fits you? You probably had a lot of titles and whatnot. You were a sergeant in the Army and you this, that, and the other. And, how many titles have you had? Just in a general conversation that might come up. I say only one that counts.
Yes, sir.
System of white supremacy, if you want me to tell the truth. That's the only one that counts. All the rest of it doesn't matter at all. Whether it's a big, important title or a little frivolous title. I mean, but victim of white supremacy, that's my most distinctive title as a black person on the planet.
Yes, sir. All righty. Thank you, Gregory from Florida. Before we get to Helen B., Mr. Fuller, would you say one of the things, the importance of a code, if we or you don't have a code or operate with a code, would it be safe to say that you are headed for direct and complete confusion?
I would say so. Because we're going to be confused even with the code. Until when? Until the end of racism. The end of racism. As long as the racists are running our business and running everything about us, we are going to be a confused people. Confusion begins the end with the end of the system of white supremacy and the beginning of the production of justice to take its place.
All righty. Guys, let's see here. Robert and Leon, take what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a little break here because I want to go straight through. So let me do it here. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on Blog Talk Radio, and it will be also reproduced here on our website, producejustice.com. Now, if you would like to get in contact with the show, just simply dial this, 516-453-9921. And if you have a question or would like to make a quick VGQ quickly, you can do that right there. You press the number 1 button or press the number 1 button. You can also join the chat room, and there is some wonderful conversation going on in there right now, and you might want to do that. And you can also Gmail me at the number 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and that question will go on rotation, and at a certain time I will read it and give you the date and time or inform you when that question is read. Okay, in about 16 minutes, Mr. Fuller will talk about his books that you can all, and any material that you can all get at producejustice.com. And for those who have just joined the show, Mr. Fuller's interview on the Carl Nelson Show yesterday, the 23rd, can be heard and is up on our website at producejustice.com, which I plan on doing. All righty. Thank you, guys. Let's go to Helen B. Helen B. in the NYC. We have you on. Go ahead, Helen B. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello. This question is for both you, Mr. Bobby, and Mr. Fuller. Can you share an experience with racism, past or present? Thank you. I learned from experiences.
Okay, Mr. Fuller.
Can you what? I didn't get the question.
Kellen, can you repeat the question?
Can you share an experience, past or present, with racism?
Okay.
An experience with racism?
Yeah, she wants to.
Well,
can you share? Mm-hmm.
Well, racism is something you experience every time you breathe. I was experiencing racism the day that I was born and even before then. The hospital I was born in, the label that was put on me, Negro. Before I was born, before my mother was born, my father, all of the people that came before me. That's experience with racism. Racism is not something you run into every now and then on occasion. If you're black and on this planet, racism is something you're drowning in from the moment you take your first breath, and even before then. Before you're born, you got a label. That label is the N-word. You, everything about you, every molecule in your body, under the system of white supremacy. So when you talk about racial experiences, a lot of people have that view of it, that every now and then you'll run into racism. Racism, you were born in a system of racism. You've never experienced or had an experience outside of racism. Never. Not for 5 minutes, not for 2 seconds. And that applies to every black person on the planet, whether they're aware of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the saddest features about it. Because racism, many white people will say, oh, yes, well, racism is somewhere out there, and and black people do have to deal with it. That is a huge inconvenience for them. And if the white person that says that is a white supremacist, they wink at another white supremacist when they say that, because they say they don't even recognize what they're in. They are in a prison. They're born in a prison and don't even know that they are in a prison.
Yes, sir. Okay. Helen, usually I don't answer a question. It's just for Mr. Fuller, but I can do this. As Mr. Fuller just said, you don't even know that you're in it. I'm going to use one word, redlining. I didn't even know I was redlined until I was over 30, redlined. Okay, thank you for your call, Helen, and since you're the first caller, I believe, don't be a stranger. Thank you for calling. Okay, we're going to go into Pennsylvania, and we got Stan here. Let me see if I can get you up here, Stan. Okay, wait a minute. There we go. Stan from Pennsylvania. Good morning, and how are you?
Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm doing fine. I hope you two gentlemen are doing fine. Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I want to make a quick statement and a question or two. I'll be very fast. The first statement is Mr. Fuller was talking about the fascination that black people have with titles. Well, the author, Lawrence Otis Graham, he just passed away in February. He was pretty young, 59 years old, but he was a writer, and he wrote an essay called The HNIC, and he explained and expressed how black people in corporate America have titles like vice president or president, and it's really insignificant. It means nothing. And he broke it down and was able to explain how to recognize it. So for the people out there listening, they can go to that essay. It's Lawrence Otis Graham, HNIC. And if I could ask two quick questions, and I'll do it very fast. The first question is, I was looking at a video on YouTube, and it was a white woman who had rescued an opossum, an animal. You can go to YouTube and see it yourself. Typically, I would just throw it in the basket of crazy things that white people do. But I noticed that this white woman at the end of the video, she said, it caught my attention. And she said, I'm giving this opossum a life that it otherwise would never have experienced. And I thought that was just really strange. And I'm like, as if this opossum is going to go to the university and get a degree and come back and tell all the other opossums about how wonderful life is with white people. I just wanted to know if Mr. Fuller can answer that question as far as that their thinking extends that far to animals of their supremacy. And if I could stay on the line and just ask another quick question.
Mr. Fuller, the first question.
Okay, that question is, the question is kind of broken up.
Okay, Stan, make that question real short so he can answer your first question, please.
Yes. White people, their like love of animals, it seems that they have this thought process that they can provide a better life even for animals than the animal would experience on its own.
So what is your question? Okay.
Oh yeah, well, do white people think about mastery of everything? Well, I don't say that about white people in general, but I'm saying the white supremacists, they coined that term, white supremacy. They are the ones. Black people didn't come up with the term white supremacy. The white people themselves who chose to be white supremacists, meaning being supreme over non-white people, wherever they happen to encounter them, anywhere in the universe, that if you're white, you will be supreme over all those people who are classified, who they classify as non-white. And in order to be supreme over people, you have to be supreme also over their environment, which would include all of what you might call animals or insects or whatnot. So that's why the white supremacists try to learn everything about everything. So when it comes to animals, like I had to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, and I think I know what you're talking about. I had a cousin that came back from the South Pacific after so-called World War II. And he got off the train or the bus and whatnot. And first person he encountered while he was still in uniform with his ribbons and whatnot overseas. He had been in the South Pacific. And he said, well, how's everything going to this white man who he saw? That's the first person he saw. Nobody else was around. Small town, railroad station or bus station or something. And so it said, well, everything's just about like it was. White man first, dog next, N-word last. And that's what my cousin told me. That was his greeting back from the South Pacific after World War II, after being over there for about 2 years. And him coming back in his uniform and coming back to a small town in Arkansas. White man first, dog next, Negro last. In other words, everything is just about like it ought to be. In other words, a dog is far more valuable than any black person you ever want to see. A lot of black people, a lot of white people walking their dogs right this moment. If you look out the window of wherever you happen to be, that message still stands. Negro, get off the sidewalk for me and my dog. Even if there's nothing on the sidewalk but my dog, get out of the way of my dog. My dog is far more valuable than you or your ancestors ever will be to me.
Okay. Stan, what is your second question? Very quickly, please.
It'll be quick, and he answered that question. Thank you very much. In his book, I can't remember what page it is, but he also, Mr. Fuller, you also have an audio online about the last name, about encountering someone, a white person with the same last name as you. And you were saying that you never encountered someone with the last name Fuller, but I have a book, R. Buckminster Fuller, The Grunch of Giants, and I just wanted to know, were you familiar with R. Buckminster Fuller and or that book? And I'd like to stay on the line. Thank you very much.
All right,
gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller?
No, I'm not familiar with the book, but I am familiar with the works, some of the works, or at least the title, and what he's known for, of Buckminster Fuller. Very prominent. An architect. And I've heard his name mentioned, read articles about him for a number of decades.
Okay. Stan, you got accidentally cut off. Call back and we'll put you back in at rotation. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to get some holler going back up into the great state of New York, and this is Dollar Bill. Dollar Bill, got you on. You are there. Okay, there you go. Dollar Bill.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
First thing I want to say is Schwa. I think you should ask that question you asked last week to Mr. Fuller. Be a little bit more descriptive in your what you're asking him, because I think you were on to something with the question that you asked last week. The next thing was the dogs that you were just talking about, Mr. Fuller. I was just walking down the street the other day, and there's people with these dogs in Manhattan. Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. They respect that dog more than they respected me. What I want to talk about today is I'm back home, got your book in front of me. I'm on page the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy, author Neely Fuller, Jr. And I'm on page 171 of the original text. And politics is the area of activity. And then the last paragraph of page 171, you say, you say, never say that you are proud to be black. And then you give your explanation. And I don't want to stay on too long because I know other people are trying to get in. But you say, never say that you are proud to be black. Being black should have nothing to do with being proud. And being proud should have nothing to do with being black. And you said that saying that you are proud and or bragging about being black serves no constructive purpose. My first question, and there, I just want you to listen to, was this in response to James Brown's song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud? That's the first question. That's like a yes or no, I guess. And then the second part of this question.
Wait a minute. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fuller. Go ahead and answer that question.
Yes. That's not contesting Mr. James Brown. I think I wrote that statement just about the time that record came out. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. But I thought about it. I say, okay, so I'm standing on a corner or somewhere or in a university, or I'm teaching a bunch of black people, or I'm making a speech, and I say, okay, I want everybody to repeat after me. I want to say it loud. I'm going to use these words. Okay, tell the world you're black and you're proud, and say it as loud as you can. Okay, now what is the code about? The code is about being effective in what you do and being constructive in what you do. Okay, now that has an effect. It takes care of that. But is it constructive for me to go around telling the world, I'm black and I'm proud. 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 Go on the job, tell everybody, I'm black and I'm proud. I'm proud to be black. I'm black and I'm proud. So you also look at the effect that you're having and on whom. So with some black people, that might mean something. I don't know what. But to white people, what does that mean to the average white person to run into a black person who says that he or she is black and proud? I'm proud of my blackness. So I thought about all of this, and I said, well, that's very theatric. But how much mileage do you actually get out of that in replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? So I looked at the logic of it, and that's why I put it in the textbook. I'm not saying that, ever. I'm black and I'm proud. But that's my choice. Now, a lot of people, can follow the song like it's put out there in an entertaining way by Mr. James Brown. I cannot speak against that. The code will not allow me to. But I'm saying I'm not ever doing that. And I'm not saying I'm ashamed of being black. So you can be proud of being black, or you can be ashamed of being black. But I'm saying neither one of them are logical, because you didn't have nothing to do with it. That's why.
Okay.
That's the reason. See, everything in the code is about logic. Everything. If you can't justify it by logic, it won't hold up under a test.
Mm-hmm.
So the white supremacists started looking at black people saying, yeah, I'm black and I'm proud. I'm gonna get me a bush. That was at the time that was written. That was the hairstyle then.
Yeah.
So black people had a contest going almost. The bigger your bush, the bigger you could grow it. I mean, so that and if you couldn't grow it, go buy one. I mean, and have that when you walk down the street, people have to walk around you. I mean, to get around you because your bush is so big. It takes up the whole sidewalk. So I looked at that, and I say, oh, okay, this is the fruits of being black and proud, or bush hairdo, and walking around saying you're black and you're proud, and then you go and get some kente cloth. That was real popular at the time. And you get some sandals like they wear in Nigeria in the summertime, whatnot, someplace in equatorial Africa. And you get some slippers that, and So you say, okay, I'm sure I'm displaying my blackness. Then it comes down to displaying it to whom? And what effect are you having in getting the things done that need doing? And I came to the conclusion, it's negligible. For one thing, the white supremacists look at it and they say, oh, is that what you're all about? You know, another hairdo, another boogaloo, another dance step. Is that it? Is that all you got? So they settled back and said, we got these Negroes forever.
Yeah.
So they don't care nothing about our braids and our hairstyle and or going around talking about we're black and our proud. And a few of them join in because they're just adventurous and whatnot. They'll join us nowadays. I see that with a lot of young white people. But how long does that go? How long does that last? You see white people out here with Black Lives Matter. They were all out in the street a few months ago. Now, we're right back to business as usual, which I knew would happen. I knew exactly that would happen. No change.
Yes.
Can't point to a change. Nothing fundamental. Okay. But we're walking around with all this just like we did back in that day. All this black culture, black proud, my ancestors. Let's get another program put on television talking about our ancestors. The white supremacists look at that and say, you want to talk about your ancestors? You know, all them dead people, and I helped make them dead. I mean, go right ahead. I'll help you.
Yeah.
That's all you're going to do. Talk about your ancestors.
Okay, Dollar Bill, what's your second question?
I know Mr. Bobby's going to cut me off. I just wanted to ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I understand that. So are you saying that really that me as a people that were because of their color of their skin, because of their having contempt, and they were mocked because of their skin for so many hundreds of years, that they even looked at themselves, that within our people, we call the blacker ones, we made fun of them. And I'm saying to you, so you find no constructive, nothing constructive that comes out of someone saying or becoming aware of their saying to themselves, you know what, I'm proud of being who I am, for whatever I am. I could be blue. That's what I'm asking you, because I think that's why James Brown wrote it, because there was like a point of where we looked at ourselves and were told that black was bad. So I'm going to leave it at that. So
right.
I just want to know, is there
Bill.
anything constructive at that? Any constructive thing that can come out of saying, I'm black and I'm proud? I'm not saying run around the street saying I'm black and I'm proud, I'm black and I'm proud. But you, in your mind and your body and your spirit, you say, I'm black and I'm proud to be black. Anything constructive. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. I want to be...
All right, Dollar Bill. Thank you.
All right. Have a good...
Okay, did you have a response to that, Mr. Fuller, before we go to your book?
That comes under VGQ.
Okay.
Like I said, I would never criticize Mr. James Brown about his song. Never. I'm not authorized to do that. That's a code violation if I did it. I'm just saying I take the position that I'm not doing it. Why?
Oh.
Because I don't have any reason to do it. That's why. And I shouldn't take credit for something that I didn't do.
Okay.
I'm black. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not proud of it, because I didn't have anything to do with it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't. To me, it's all empty calories. I mean, if I'm going to take pride, which I really shouldn't do, in my opinion, this is my opinion of myself, in doing something, in accomplishing something, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to do anyway. So I don't even take pride in anything that I ever accomplished. If I went to the moon and back and brought it back with me, I mean, and did all kind of miracles and walked the water like Jesus, I mean, I wouldn't be proud of that. I would just say, well, I walked the water, and that's just a talent that I have, and I hope that walking the water helped other people to be able to walk the water because then they wouldn't drown. It's got to show a constructive result. See, everything about codification is about constructive results.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So the question is always, whatever you're doing, is it producing a constructive result? Yes or no?
Yes
or no. Because there's no such thing as in between.
Okay. In reference to earlier in the program you were talking about war, and then I read that article by Bamber Ridge, and I told you can get that from I got some of that information from Wikipedia. There's also you made a statement about war, Mr. Fuller, and there's also a good documentary on YouTube that explains what war really is. It's called All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. You can get that on YouTube. 43 minutes gives you a complete understanding what every single war is about. Money, money, money. Anyway. And Stan, going back to what you said about that book, the HNIC, or Mr. Fuller had mentioned about black people liking titles. If I'm correct or incorrect, it might be, is HNIC, does that stand for Head Nigger in Charge? I was just wondering, or is there something else? Anyway, check that out for me or let me know what that means. Mr. Fuller, this is the time where a reference was made to your book, and really all throughout this program we've made references throughout your book. In fact, the book that Dollar Bill was talking about, the original edition on page 171, not in the Revised Standard, but in 171, he got that information and read from it. But, Mr. Fuller, speak about your book.
Yes, you can get the book, and what the things that I've been saying from my viewpoint, all are in the book, most of them anyway, or some derivative of it. In the textbook for victims of white supremacy, like I said, that's my title. That's my most distinctive title. That's the only title that really counts. I never had a title and never will have a title as long as a system of white supremacy exists that'll be more important than the title of victim of white supremacy. And you can, on the website, go into producejustice.com, if you look at the back of the book, I think it's at the website, there's a list of things about what the book is about. And it's about the author. But I identify myself. I, Neely Fuller, Jr., the writer, author of this book, have been, like millions of others, a long time, victim of and servant racism, white supremacy, in all areas of activity. And then I go on to talk about the significance of me writing the book. Unlike most authors, I didn't start talking about credentials and all like that because I don't have any. I don't have any credibility, and I'm not supposed to have any credibility. No one is supposed to believe what I say, Neely Fuller, just because Neely Fuller said it, and I'm authorized to say it. I authorize myself to author a book. So these are just opinions. But I talk about what my opinions are in the book. My opinions about what? About racism, what it is, how it works, in the form of a thing called white supremacy. And I wrote the book about what the individual person can do about it, in my opinion. But it's not a guarantee that it will work, because nothing has worked so far that anybody has tried to do about replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. So far, everybody has failed, including Neely Fuller, Jr. Now, that's either a true statement or a false one. But I'm saying so far, in replacing the entire system of white supremacy with the system of justice, everybody who has attempted to do it so far has failed. Everybody has proven themselves a failure. And they are failures not because they weren't trying. They were trying. And they said they were trying. but they failed. Neely Fuller has failed. Everybody has failed. So that's why I even invented a term called VGQ, meaning don't criticize another person's efforts, no matter what it looks like on the surface, or whether you agree with it or disagree with it. You're not authorized to do that because you haven't replaced the system of white supremacy with justice. So don't criticize what somebody else's efforts are. That's the logic. How can you, what authorizes any black person to criticize another black person's attempts to deal with racism or to eliminate it, or how they think about it, or they think it's absurd, or they keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result, and they'll criticize that. Well, maybe they can keep doing it over and over again, and they'll get a different result, because sometimes environments change. You can keep doing the same thing over and over again, but the time is not the correct time to be doing it. But then the time might evolve when that is the correct thing to do. It's the correct thing to do today, but 2 weeks ago it wasn't the correct thing to do. See, so the world is a peculiar place. So solving problems are done in a peculiar manner. So everybody's manner in which they go about trying to do what? Solve any problem should not be criticized until the problem is solved by someone who finally knew what they were doing. So I tried to write the textbook for victims of white supremacy to try to fill in, I call it the compensatory code, because I say this is something that nobody's really talking about, and that is having a code for the individual person, because the white supremacists have a code. The white code is successful because it's addressed to individual people. Every individual white person knows the white code by the time they're around 15 years old.
And you can get the book at?
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com.
Okay, good. Okay, we have about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left on this particular program. Let's see. Let's do this. Mr. Fuller, for those that have just joined the program, can hear Mr. Fuller as he spoke yesterday, August the 23rd, on the Carl Nelson Show. I understand I was told this morning that the show is up at the on the producejustice.com website, which I plan to hear. I was just informed this morning that he was on there, and I definitely want to hear that interview. But for those who would like to hear more of Mr. Fuller, you can get it by going to producejustice.com, and the entire interview on the Carl Nelson Show would be there, and you can do that. Okay. Good morning to Neuron. Neuron, I don't know if I can ask your question, but I'm going to try. Mega, VGQ, glad you're in. And for Emery Lumumba, I'd like to know if you are related to or in the lineage of Patrice Lumumba. Just thought I would ask that. Okay. For those of you who have to go, we are coming to the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. We thank you for listening and hope that you will tune in again for next week's show. So thank you very, very much. Now, for those of you who are going to stay and those who are on the line, hang on, because we have another hour to go with this program, the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. So I'm going to end this first hour and commence the second hour in 7 seconds from right now. Okay, good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and welcome to the program. And if you have any questions, simply dial this number, 516-453-9921, and make sure that you press the number 1 button. I would ask, please, ma'am, please, sir, and this is very serious, when you ask your question or you give a VGQ, please, 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 be short and be concise so that Mr. Fuller can ask, or rather answer, your question. And if you have 2 questions, again, make it short so that he can hear it and he can answer that and move on. Please, please do that. That we've had some people that really want, are trying to get their point across, but they're kind of too long, and I was asked about that. So I'm asking you, ma'am, I'm asking you, sir, please, be brief. Be brief. As Jason Stratton said in the transporter, number 1, be brief in that, okay? We can do that. All righty. So now let me present to others and introduce to those who don't know him, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay. Let's go over here to John from Houston. John, going to get you on here. Okay, there you go.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir.
To you both on this great day. The answer to your HNIC question, Mr. Bobby, is yes.
Okay.
Head
Thank
Negro
you.
in charge evolved from big man on campus.
Okay.
If you want to talk about titles.
Okay.
You said something that was intriguing, and I will use that as the context, whether you consider this a VGQ or not, was redlining.
Yes.
Chattel slavery, American capitalism, the white man's burden. Now, when I listen to Mr. Fuller, and he is correct in what he says, and being constructive with my results, the closest analogy I can give to white supremacy is a virus. And when we're talking about a viral situation, you have a parasite and you have a host. Now, whether you consider what I'm saying as a VGQ and whether he wants to respond to it as a question, the only way of getting healthy, which I think would be the constructive result, to have the entire removal of a viral condition before a person, a body, or a society can get towards wellness. So I'm trying to understand, and I do hope that I am stating this in clear enough and brief fashion, that the entire removal of white supremacy is no different than having a pandemic of COVID-19 being totally removed. And a vaccine does not do that. A vaccine does not do that. You have to have the entire detrimental, viral, parasitic environment removed before I could have the healthiness of producing justice. And can I hold to hear his response?
Okay, John, got you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby.
Okay, you are welcome. Okay, Mr. Fuller, I believe that was VGQ, and you don't have a response, or do you have a response for a person's VGQ? If not, I'll move on.
No, I don't have a response to VGQ. That's a presentation.
Okay.
So people can think about what was said and act accordingly.
Okay.
That's the code prescription on that. That comes under VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification.
Okay. All right. Hey, John, thank you for the HNIC clarification. I just wanted to be sure if that was true in the books about that. Thank you very much. Here's a question here, Mr. Fuller, from Neuron. Says this, good morning, Mr. Fuller. Your thoughts on religion have constructively influenced my viewpoint on the matter. Question. On page 267 of the Revised Expanded Edition, you defined eclectic pluralism. If a black person is getting constructive results from following some of the practices of the Nation of Islam, but has deep reservations about the racist history of the religion of Islam, what should that black person do? Thank you for your efforts, Mr. Fuller.
Under religion, that comes definitely under VGQ. a black person should take what I do under eclectic pluralism, since I think that's what the call is referring to. That's why I called it eclectic pluralism. When people ask me, what is the name of my religion? Neely Fuller, what's the name of your religion? I say eclectic pluralism. That's the name of my religion. That's the truth. Because I practice my religion. And they say, well, eclectic pluralism, I never heard of that. Most people have said that to me when I say that. Or everybody, really, because I made it up. I took the word eclectic and the word plural and pluralism and put them together. And I called the name of my religion eclectic pluralism. And I describe it in the textbook, because that is Neely Fuller's religion. And what is it designed to do? It's a religion that is designed intentionally to find the true religion. And in the process of finding the true religion, you borrow bits and pieces in response to what the caller is saying, I think, of all of the religions you've ever heard about, since every religion is supposed to have some features that other religions borrow from. So I just joined that crowd. And I joined, a little bit of Confucianism, a little bit of what people say is Islam. I hear a Muslim minister say something that makes sense to me. I'll use that. I'll hear something that a Christian minister says that makes sense to me, that is logical, whatnot. I'll take that. I'll hear something that a Confucianist says. I'll take that. In other words, bits and pieces of every religion. Religions have labels. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism. And I'll hear a person, who says that he or she is a Hindu, make a remark that came out of something that a Hindu writer wrote. And I say, is that a part of the Hindu religion? And if the person says yes, well, seems like that part makes sense to me, so I'm going to use it. But as a conglomerate, eclectic pluralism just means choosing from many. I chose two words that would express that, choosing from many. Choosing from many what? Many different philosophies, many different religions, many different customs that are not even attached to a religion in a formal way, but they are the customs of the people. And they are things that I do. I used to call myself a Christian, but then I looked at, first of all, what are the qualifications for being a Christian? That's a logical question. What's the qualifications for being a Jew? What's the qualifications for being a Muslim or a Hindu? So I say, what's the qualifications for being a Christian, since I was calling myself one? And I say, well, I'm confused, because I see people who say that they're Christians doing a little of this and a little of that, and then I see Christians themselves getting into huge arguments, hitting each other over the head with the Bible. Then I read about the whole history of Christianity, King Richard and the Crusaders, killing all those people, spreading Christianity by the tip of a sword. And then I hear that, no, Christians don't do that. Well, is King Richard a Christian? Well, he was. He said he was. I mean, who am I to judge? As one priest recently said about sexuality and whatnot. Who am I to judge? So, and then you say you got Catholics and Protestants, and they can't get along, and then you got all the different type of Protestants. I mean, one Protestant fighting the other Protestants. You go in one church, and the person says, well, those people down the street there, they call themselves Christians, but they ain't real Christians. The real Christianity here is Reverend Jones. You ain't in the Reverend Jones church. You ain't no real Christian. Reverend Jones got it all together. The rest of all these people, they ain't got it. Billy Graham and the rest of them, I mean, you don't have to pay no attention to them. You better come to Reverend Jones. He's got it together. He knows the real deal. Now, I've heard this, and I heard it like forever.
Yes,
so
sir.
I say, hey, until all of you people of whatever religious persuasion stop killing each other and mistreating each other over whose religion is the best, I'm standing back, and I'm going to find out what the true religion is, and then I'm going to make a decision. And in the meantime, I'm going to call myself what I really am so that I am not a hypocrite, and that is a pluralist, meaning I do a little of this and a little of that because I'm lost and I'm trying to find my way.
Okay. Wow. Okay, let's do this. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. This comes from Miss Anonymous. She says this. This is her statement. Mr. Fuller, I was watching a movie called Three Can Play That Game, and the character Shantae Smith, which is a relationship expert who uses her knowledge to teach black women how to study black men. Also, I find it strange that they kept on saying that black men are dogs, and it's a black woman's job to train them. My question for you, Mrs. Fuller, is: do you think that that's true, that a black woman have to do this in order to keep a black man?
Well, if she chooses to, the code is all about selectivity. Whatever you choose, whatever you see the black male as being, and you think he needs training, you think he needs to be corrected, and you choose to correct him, and you make that statement, well, that's your choice. That comes under VGQ. See, anything dealing with race, racism, or counter-racism, if you're a victim of racism, whatever stand you take, you are entitled to take it. However you view race, racism, or counter-racism, meaning being against racism, whatever road you choose to take, no one should criticize you for doing it. Like early in the program, we're talking about say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. The person that wants to do that and they think that solves the problem shouldn't be criticized for doing it. I'm just saying that I looked at it and I chose not to do it because I said I didn't have anything to do with being black. So I'm not taking credit for being black. I'm not walking around talking about being proud of something that I didn't do. I'm not going to be ashamed of it, but I ain't going to be proud of it either because I didn't have anything to do with doing it. And if I'm going to be proud of something, it has to do with something that I'm doing, something that I have done. And even then, I shouldn't be proud because the only thing I should be doing is something I should have been doing anyway. So why be proud of something that you should have been doing anyhow and you hadn't been doing it?
Okay. All righty. Let's see here, Mr. Fuller. Oh, well, yeah. This is from Mr. Thompson. So, Mr. Fuller, the movie Shaka Zulu confirms a great amount of what you say. They speak how the world is a slave ship. But my question to you, have you ever seen the movie or the series of Shaka Zulu?
No, I haven't.
Okay. All right, there you go, Jermaine. Mr. Fuller said he hasn't seen it. Okay. Nicely done, Mr. Fuller, nicely done. Let's go back to the 832, and I think this is a different John. Let's see here. We can tell by the voice. All right, John, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
How you guys doing today?
Go ahead, John. Good, sir.
Okay, yes. I have a VGQ question. I'll go real quick.
Thank you.
I work with a guy, and I work with a lot of people from the region of Africa. And I asked him about Shaka Zulu, and he was just telling me how the Americans make him to be a hero for black people, but over there they say Shaka Zulu was killing all kind of black people. So that's what I've heard about it. It might be misinformation just because he's from Africa. But so my question also is that last week they spoke about ambiguity in speech when it comes to people, Caucasian people, MCR1 gene type people. So my question is that what do you think was a problem in the time of evolution when it came to us not catching on with how they spoke?
What do I think in the time of evolution was what?
Was the problem with us not catching on with how certain people talk? You know, it's like speaking with the forked tongue.
Oh, I don't know. I don't really understand the question.
I mean, why couldn't we catch on with the forked tongue speaking that he was doing? You know, because he wasn't the first to do it.
In other words, if I understand the question, how come black people didn't know that a white supremacist was telling a lie?
Yeah. Exactly.
Is that the question?
That's the question, yes, sir.
Because we didn't know that the white person was telling a lie. That's the answer. We weren't suspicious.
Oh, okay.
See, in other words, if you have doubts that a person is telling the truth, then your doubts might lead to maybe the conclusion that the person is deliberately not telling you the truth. And that's called lying. So we just wasn't aware of what they were doing, that's all. Not being aware of the motive of the person who is telling you something. So black people were easy targets for an expert liar.
Okay.
The white supremacists obviously were very good at deceiving people. And they are still very good at doing that today.
Yeah.
They're the best in the world. They're the best in the world, and they have proven that they are the best when it comes to deception, when it comes to making you believe things that are not true. If you're black, the white supremacists are the best in the world. They have proven that over and over again.
All righty. Thank you very much, John from Houston. You know the deal. Don't be a stranger. For those of you who may have just tuned in, Mr. Fuller interview on the Carl Nelson Show from August the 23rd, which was yesterday, can be heard on our website at producejustice.com. Of course, myself, I didn't know that he was on, but I plan to catch up on that to hear what Mr. Fuller said, because like you, even though I co-host a show and facilitated, I'm still learning. I just was blessed to be kind enough, or was asked to work with Mr. Fuller with this, and so I'm very privileged to do that I do not take for granted. Let's see here. So that's the Carl Nelson Show that Mr. Fuller was on. I believe it was 2 hours. Is that correct, Mr. Fuller, the interview? Or
yes,
whatever
sir, it was.
Okay. Right. Okay. All righty. Let's go here. This question is this. Hello, Mr. Fuller. This is from Diva224, says this: If white supremacists are always white supremacists, then why is it necessary to make a distinction via colors when talking about victims of white supremacy? For example, why do we need to know a victim is yellow, black, or brown if white supremacy is white supremacy?
Well, we don't need to know that. The categories of race, according to the code, are not the 21 or 22 categories that you find in what they call the U.S. Census. if I remember correctly, it's around 21 or 22 categories. It's just 3: white, non-white, and white supremacists. But you have to be white to be a white supremacist. So actually, you just have 2 major categories there. But you got to give at least the hypotheses or the speculation or the idea that a whole lot of white people are not white supremacists. Why? Based on what? Based on logic. Newborn white babies are not white supremacists. They don't know one color from another. You have to know your colors. You have to know a color. You have to be able to look at a color and tell what that color is, particularly in a person. That's one of the first qualifications for being a white supremacist. If you don't know one color from another, you can't be a white supremacist. You can't function as one because you don't know your colors. So a newborn white baby is not a racist because a newborn baby doesn't know one color from another in people. You have to know that. You absolutely have to know that. That's an absolute. So, and then you got another category. I often give this illustration. The most prominent races in the world. I'm talking about a white person who says that he believes in racism, that racism is the greatest form of government that you can possibly have for these savages that don't know nothing about nothing unless somebody knocks their heads together. I mean, a lot of white people say that they are racist. They believe in racism. They believe that they have a category of a supreme race, and that's the white race. And all other so-called races are just a bunch of garbage, all right? And they say that outright. But when that same person begins to lose their ability to know one color from another, and if you stay here long enough, you can be the most rabid racist in the world, but you keep getting up in the morning and going to bed at night, and you stay here and years go by, you'll get to the place where you're just like that newborn babe. You don't know one color from another. You don't know a spoon from a fork. You don't know that it's time to go to the bathroom. And you might have a black lady wheeling you up and down the hall at a minimum wage, and you were the greatest racist in the world. Talking about the superiority of this race, the superiority of that race, and you're not superior to anything because you just stayed here. That's all you have to do. Just keep getting up in the morning and going to bed at night. You get there. I don't care who you are. There's a lesson in that, according to the code.
Okay.
There's a reason why that is. And that applies to everybody, all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It applies to me right now. I'm getting to the place I don't remember things like I used to. Oh, yeah, you get to the place, and I will get to the place if I stay here long enough, where I won't know one color from another.
Wow.
All right.
Picking up on that, descended in, and I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but speaking about the infants or the white children, could they be considered, and I'm going to use your term, descendant, potential racist suspects? Because they understand the difference between who's in charge and who isn't?
No, you have to be able to practice. See, that's why I say you're not a racist if you're not able to be one. That's why I say that white person, and a person say, that's a racist in that wheelchair. I say, no, don't make a charge that's false. Always go with the truth. Say, yeah, I read all his writings, I listened to all his speeches and whatnot, but there he is now. He's 102 years old. He don't know a spoon from a fork. I say, does he know the difference between one color and another? No, he don't know one color from another. He don't even know he's alive. He's still breathing. I mean, you don't know nothing. He's all wired up with every type of tube you can name, up his nose and whatnot. and, you know, got a tube in his rear end and the front end. I mean, he's a mess.
Okay.
And I will say, he doesn't qualify to be a racist.
Okay.
I don't care what he was 50 years ago. He's not a racist. Don't call him that. Why? Because it ain't true. That's why.
Okay. All right. I'll leave that right there. Okay, guys, at the Robert and Moon Pie, I'm going to take a little station break. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on Blog Talk Radio, and also we produce at ProduceJustice.com. For questions that you may want to ask Mr. Fuller or VGQ comments, simply dial 516-453-9921 and be sure to press the number 1 button and you will get in rotation. Hopefully I can get to your calls. You can also email me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. And the chat room is on and popping this morning. You can get in there and become part of the chat universe, which is very, very good. In about 16 minutes, Mr. Fuller will be talking about his book, so stay tuned for that. And for those who have just joined the show, Mr. Fuller's interview on the Carl Nelson Show from yesterday, August the 23rd, can be heard here on ProduceJustice.com, and Mr. Fuller confirmed that it is basically a 2-hour interview, so you may want to check that out, and I know I plan to do that also. But right now, you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Okay, before we go on to the callers, this question here, Mr. Fuller, from Angelus says this: when you have ever been disappointed by people, which time you can remember, were you disappointed yourself, or could you explain or speak on the 4 Ds?
People don't disappoint me because I don't expect anything except disaster. So that's a code requirement. Every situation you go into expecting disaster.
Okay.
But you work the best you can to prevent disaster. That's the compensatory way. That's, making up for what's missing. You go into every situation expecting the worst, but working for the best.
Okay.
So when people so-called disappoint you, you shouldn't be disappointed. You should say, that's the kind of world that you're in. That's why Casablanca is my favorite movie, because the character in it, played by Humphrey Bogart, Rick Blaine, a very flawed person like we all are, he says, I just do the best I can under these terrible circumstances. And all the circumstances are terrible. Now, I didn't expect them to be anything but terrible. I expect everybody who approaches me to have some type of scheme or some type of, trying to do me some type of harm. They're not trying to help me. That includes you, Louis, talking about the chief of police. And Louis let him know, well, you got that right. I'll sell you out in a minute, Rick, if the going gets hot. But now when the going is going good, I'm all with you. But if anybody comes down on me about my association with you, I don't know you. And I'm letting you know this right now. And Rick said, yeah, I understand that. You'll sell me out to the Germans. You'll have me in a concentration camp in a minute if it's to your advantage. All right? But up until then, I can work with you. Why?
Okay.
Because everybody who I'm around, I don't look for people to do good. I look for everybody to be a rip-off artist. All right? My girlfriend, everybody. Okay? And that's the biggest lesson in the movie Casablanca that I think every black person should learn.
Okay. Yes. Could you speak on the 4 Ds?
4 Ds meaning what? I don't remember them.
Just reading it just the way he wrote it. The 4 Ds.
Oh, I don't remember them. I wrote so many things. I got the 4 Ds. I got the 3 A's. I got the 3 T's.
Okay.
You know?
I'll check that out. Okay, and then finally it says, as an eclectic pluralist, which quotes in any of the holy books would you consider constructive? I've heard you quote the Bible once about the grasshopper.
Any quotes that you see anywhere, including graffiti on a wall, that you can use to produce something that's going to produce a constructive result, use it. That's the codified way. Doesn't make any difference what book is in. It can be a magazine or a daily newspaper, something that somebody wrote at a meeting. Any quote that you can use that will produce a constructive result. Because codification is all about just 2 words out of all the millions of words that are written. Codification, counter-racist codification, the black code, you might call it, what I have written in the form of what I call a code, is all really about 2 words. Constructive results. That's all that you're seeking in any move that anybody ever makes. Anything that anybody says, anything that anybody does, any philosophy that anybody comes to the microphone with, all you want, what's going to be the constructive result? That's the bottom line question. That's the top line question. And that's infused in everything in between. Constructive results, constructive results, constructive results, constructive results. In every breath that you take, in every move that you make, and anybody else makes. That's your only question. What's the constructive result? What's the constructive result? You know, you told them to tell me you've been here and you've been there and you learned this and you learned that and you know how to say this and you know how to say that and you know so and so and this person's got that title and that person's got this title and whatnot. Hey, everybody. I just want to know one thing. What's the constructive result? Show me the constructive result.
Okay.
Now, if you can't come up with a constructive result, we'll talk when you do.
Oh.
All the drama don't count.
Okay. Let's go to Marcus. Marcus, got you on. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
My question that I had this morning just got switched to. I am actually reading a report right now that there is a high school out over here in Southern California by the name of Salinas High School, and it looks like the students dressed up a black doll and named it, quote-unquote, Shaniqua. And the reports are saying that the students at the high school football game are violently and sexually abusing the black doll that they dressed up. And I'm just reading, this is reports as they're coming in. So my question to Mr. Fuller is, since this is a high school, and I do remember you saying by the age of 15 there are white kids who are fully functional and able to practice racism. Could you speak on that just a little bit more once again?
I just threw that out. 15 years old. It may vary from place to place. I don't know. But I just threw that out, generally speaking, because I think, generally speaking, it might apply. That is the truth, for one thing. There's something going on among white people and black people. There's a reason why we don't get along, as Rodney King requested. You know, why can't we get along? Why is there a race problem? It's a race problem because somebody is practicing racism. So always expect anything that you see in a racist system to be supportive of racism in every area of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. In all of these categories, expect the dominant feature in economics, in education, in entertainment, and so on and so on. In everything you see people doing, to be drowning in racism. Racism is the biggest feature in anything that you see going on around you anywhere. You don't have to search for it, and on a certain page in the newspaper. Every page that you turn, you're looking at it. Every time you turn on television, if you see an advertisement, it's dripping with racism. What advertisement? Anyone that you're looking at.
Okay.
Anyone that you're looking at, directly and indirectly. There's no way to escape racism. So there's no such thing as a racial incident, unless you say all incidents are racial.
Yes, sir.
Now you got it. You got the truth.
Yes,
all incidents are racial. I don't care what it looks like on the surface. It's still racial. Period.
Okay, thank you.
Car wrecks are racial.
Okay. Let's go into Dallas, and we have Ray. Ray, man, you made it. You're in. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, gentlemen. Can I be heard?
Ray, what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hello. Yes, Mr. Fuller. Given the insidious nature of the system of white supremacy as it relates to how the white supremacists admitted in their own recorded history have dominated and mistreated the entire known universe, including the planet, natural resources, animals, insects, and all people, including white people who may or may not practice white supremacy, is it logically insane to suspect that the white supremacists may not have originated on planet Earth but have been able to mimic and exist among white people?
Is it logical to what?
Is it logically insane to suspect that the white supremacists may not have originated on planet Earth but have been able to mimic and exist among white people?
I don't know. But you can suspect that, and you can research it, check it out, and see if it's true. See, everything in codification is about truth, whether people want to accept it or not. But finding the truth, the code, the essence of the code is you start with truth. You have to have that in order to get justice and correctness and that thing that everybody talks about but nobody's ever achieved, quote, unquote, peace. It's never been achieved. Peace is the result of truth being used in such a way that justice is the result and correctness. Justice is balance between people, guaranteeing that no one is mistreated, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And correctness means correcting all things that are out of balance. Because in the system of white supremacy, everything is out of balance.
Out of balance, yes,
Nothing is the way that it ought to be. The environment is out of balance, everything. Because the white supremacists, once they start making people out of balance, people have a tendency to make the environment out of balance. So everything gets all messed up, you might say, in a huge and sophisticated manner, but it's still messed up.
Still messed up.
Black people are messed up, yes. We're all messed up creatures, everything. All the animals, everything is just as messed up as it can be. Nobody has bragging rights. No one. Truth be told.
Truth be told. Okay. Let's venture out to the left coast, and Brother Swa is there. All right, my brother.
Grand Rising, Mr. Bobby, Grand Rising, Mr. Neely Fuller, and a quick BGQ before my question. Starting Race Cool War this Sunday at 11 p.m. PST for folks who would like to participate. And my question, Mr. Neely Fuller, is am I correct? Am I thinking that we as non-white people, particularly black people, should have an understanding that it's produce justice or kill us all? Is that a correct thinking pattern to have produce justice or kill us all in regards to the white supremacists?
Yeah, that's the logical procedure. The white supremacists will have to make that decision. See, when I say we, people who say, like I do, that justice ought to replace the system of white supremacy. We need a system of justice. And if the white supremacist says, no, we're not going to have a system of justice, we're going to have a system of injustice, because white supremacy is about non-justice.
Correct.
Justice is incompatible with the system of white supremacy. So that's a head-on collision. So logically speaking, that means that if we keep going back and forth with white people are going to have to make a decision. Shall we kill all these black people and be done with this thing? Shall we kill all of the black people while we got the muscle, as they say in the Corleone family? In the movie, that question was raised. Hey, are you going to kill all the heads of the 5 families or not? Because they're going to keep coming after us. They're going to keep complaining about this, that, and the other, and you not cooperating. So you might have to wind up killing them all. Now, that's a decision you have to make. So in Godfather 1, Don Corleone said, well, Michael, you might have to make that decision even after I'm gone. And so a lot of the people, who have been going along with me might decide that you either got to kill them or they're going to kill you. They're going to put you out of business, and there won't be no more Corleone family. So black people in this gangster system called the system of white supremacy, we're caught up in this. So at some point, the white supremacists will have to make that decision if we keep pushing for a thing called justice. Because justice and white supremacy cannot exist on the same planet at the same time. It just cannot happen. That's impossible. So the white supremacists do have to make that decision. Shall we kill all these people, or shall we do justice? Because that's what they're option for. That's the only option they're giving us out. All right? So that's a decision that white people have to make. And we're supposed to be in the business of pushing them to make that decision. Now, I don't want to die, but if they make that decision, I'm already their prisoner of war, and we just say, hey, rather than release all these black prisoners all over the place, while we got them, while we got the muscle, let's just gun them all down. They can't defend themselves. They ain't got nothing. So we'll just be dead. And I'm saying we got to keep pushing, even if we wind up dead. So what?
So what? Wow. From the chat room, Invisible Negro said this. He said, I think there's a barometer for mistreatment. As Francis Cress Welsing said, if you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're white, you're all right, or something to that extent. I may be off on that, but there are clips of it on YouTube. Do you remember that, her saying that, Mr. Fuller, or something to that effect?
That's a very, very, very old saying.
Okay.
That Dr. Wilson says that it's been handed down, and she's correct. I heard that when I was in elementary school.
Wow.
Okay. That was just a saying that black people went around saying all the time, because the white supremacists have set it up that way.
Yes, sir.
All right? And set it up, and it manifests itself right here in the year 2021. You find black people beating up people who have the label of, quote, unquote, being Asian, all right? And you have black people among themselves who traditionally, they say, well, she's what you call high yellow, talking about the light-skinned black female.
Yes.
And the dark-skinned black female will be envious of her because they say, oh, you're talking about that yellow gal, all right? And, she's going to get the part because she's yellow, all right? And they ain't hiring nobody to look like me. I'm jet black. So I know they ain't going to even consider me. I'm a better actress. But, I mean, they say that they got to have somebody for the part that kind of looks like they're closer to white. So they're going to pick the yellow gal. I know that, even when we got in the lineup. So, but the white supremacists set that up, too, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we shouldn't let that exploit us.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that, Mr. Fuller, in that when the discussion was on Rosa Parks and her famous act for what she did, but I didn't know this until I found this out and then researched it, and then there was an interview on NPR by a lady by the name of Claudette Colvin. She had done the same thing before Rosa Parks, but the only problem is she was dark, and Rosa Parks was light. Outstanding interview. Okay, let's go to my man down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here we go. Willie, we got you on, man. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning,
yes,
Mr.
Sir.
Fuller. So, a quick VGQ and a question. So, I have been following Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller since about 1989. My brother, Theatri TX Screen, produces a local radio show for decades now here in Charlotte, and I don't think there's an episode that he doesn't mention Mr. Fuller. So the VGQ is, if somebody, I remember the sister who called talking about getting the books in the library, but I like to encourage anybody who has access to the broadcast mediums, whether it's radio or television, to kind of really put that word out there that here's a brother who is our sage. I think of Mr. Fuller and Dr. Welsing as sages in the tradition of Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War back in about 100 BCE. So, we just want to get that word out because here's a brother who is basically producing a vibe that is waking us up. And so that's the VGQ. The thing about pride, Dr. Welsing answers the question of why. Why do we kill each other? Why do we drink? Why do we call our women's bees and so forth and all that? She gets into that as a psychiatrist. Then Mr. Fuller, as a bookend, comes and says, once we answer the question of why, and it's white supremacy, here's what you do about it. And so that is the VGQ.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, the question is, what, in your working with Dr. Welsing all those years, what we need to wake up pretty quick and regain control of our minds. Is there a synopsis of the accumulated wisdom that you've had in working with her or doing your work individually? How would you say that accumulated wisdom would advise you to talk to us about how to regain control of our minds individually and collectively? What does your wisdom inform you in terms of how we should do that?
Well, according to the code itself, first of all, Neely Fuller doesn't have any wisdom. Get that straight right from the beginning. I just have an opinion. That's not wisdom. I don't have any wisdom. Wisdom means you have done the job, not trying to do it. You've done the job that needs doing. So nobody's wise when it comes to what to do about the system of white supremacy. Nobody has proven that they have the wisdom. You're a wise person when you are an absolute problem solver, not a person trying to solve a problem. You don't try to do nothing. You do it. You do it. It's either done or it doesn't. What effort you put forward doesn't count. It's just like you haven't done anything if you don't actually do it, what you set out to do. That's the way that works. According to what? According to Neely Fuller? No. According to logic.
Logic, yes.
Yes. So That is the one thing that I say black people have to center on. Stop being enchanted by people, period. Any person, I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter who it is. Look at the problem and look at the solution. The solution is in the logic that came with the universe. Don't ever take your eyes off of whatever works, whatever produces constructive results. Don't get involved in personalities at all. That's the one thing that I know for sure. Once you start getting taken in by a personality, whether that's Neely Fuller or any individual that you ever even heard about in the history of the universe, once you start centering on that individual person, you've already made a huge mistake. The individual person may be the carrier of some ideas. Like that's what I'm trying to be. But I'm just a messenger boy. That's all for logic. And anybody that says anything that makes sense that you can use, you can listen to what is being said, but don't become all enthralled with the person or involved with the person, emotionally or any other kind of way. Black people keep lining up at funerals, saying, oh, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. My leader's dead. We're always looking for a leader when our leader is in the universe all of the time.
Yes, sir.
And that leader is a thing called logic. Leader, logic. 2 L's. Logic, leader. Logic is your leader. The creator of the universe put logic into the universe. Cause and effect. Something is either going to be constructive or non-constructive.
Yes, sir.
There's no such thing as in between. Mm-hmm. So you just look at everything that people do and divide it into those categories. It's either constructive or non-constructive.
All righty.
Results are going to be constructive or non-constructive. And don't latch on to that. Every situation is going to produce something that is constructive or non-constructive. Don't turn loose of that and you got it all.
Yes, sir. Constructive results. Okay, last question. Let's go to Illinois. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. Justice, I'm trying to get you in here. Wait a minute. I got a little buffering action here. I don't know if that's good or bad. Here we go. Wait a minute. Justice, are you there? Because I've got a little circle going on here. So it says that you had a question. Okay, there you go. Justice? There you go. Justice, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. You sound like you're far away, but go ahead and ask your question.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
I would like Mr. Fuller to speak about a lot of black people say when he says we are victims of racism, they say, why are you clinging to the victim mentality? You're only giving white supremacists power and things like that. But we have to go to them for everything. So there are black people who would say, oh, I have $1 million, I have this amount of money, I'm free. How do we respond to that?
All right, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Oh, you just ask a white, you go to page 171 and 172. I always say, when you start wondering or you get lost for words, 171 and 172 of the Revised Expanded Textbook for Victims of White Supremacy will take you right where you should be every time. That's supposed to be a guarantee. Now, I say it's a guarantee until I hear different, but every time I do it, I get lost. Neely Fuller gets lost and doesn't know. I don't know what to do. 171, 172. That's one of the last things that I put in the revised expanded edition. And it always gets me right back where I need to be. Why? Because it has to do with wants, W-A-N-T, or W-A-N-T-S. Everybody wants something. So when a white person starts saying anything about anything and you start getting confused about how you should respond, just go into the question mode of those 4 questions in page 171 and 172. First of all, ask yourself those 4 questions, and then ask whomever you're talking to those 4 questions. I'm kind of running out of time now, so I'm crowding this in. 171 and 172 of the revised expanded edition of the code book that you can get by going to producejustice.com. And ask those 4 questions, first of all, at the bottom of the page of yourself on page 171, and then ask that of any white person or black person or anybody. If you're in a school, if you're in a, talking to anybody in any kind of conversation about anything, those 4 questions and the answers of those 4 questions. And don't interfere with the answers that you got. Just be ready with the next question of the 4. It will take everybody right where they should be in answer to your one question in the short time that I have. As I always say, if it sounds like in any situation you're getting lost for words or you don't know exactly what to do or say, or you're talking to this white person or that black person, or you're in a school or you're on a job or something like that, turn to page 171, 172 of the textbook. Have it right there with you. And ask everybody present to answer those 4 questions, and it'll put everybody right where they should be. Won't take everybody where they want to be, but it's guaranteed to take everybody where they should be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Now, we got 2 minutes to go. This is the time where you can speak about your book before I have to close it down for this week. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, and I just went over something that's in the book. That's why I'm saying we need books that tell us what to do about every situation that comes up. And some people have said, I already got that book. That book was written thousands of years ago, Fuller. It's called the Bible. I got my Bible, man. I go to Proverbs, Corinthians. Man, I got it all right there about what to do, what to say. I mean, I don't never get lost. Well, then, the codified response to that is, if that's what it does for you, it always produces a constructive result, why turn loose to something that works? Because a lot of people will say that, man, I read the Bible and all like that, and all these people always waving the Bible at you every time you say something, whatnot. I ain't paying no attention to them, man. I mean, that's just another book. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff in there, man. Hey, all these preachers out here doing this. Codification is about doing whatever produces constructive results. If you come up with a catalog and you say, this is the book that I go by, and you say, it ain't nothing in here but a whole bunch of merchandise being sold, you say, well, it produces all the results in this book that I want in all areas of activity. I got the answers right here in this catalog. You say, this is a catalog about selling stuff. This is a merchandise catalog. Well, an answer, or it might be a telephone book. This is the book. So I'm saying, if it works where you have a constructive result, stick with it.
All righty.
Don't turn loose to it. So you can get mine by going to producejustice.com.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fuller. Boy, I'll tell you, when I was in TV, you were spot on, right on time. Okay, listen, everybody, we're getting ready to end the show, but we thank you for your participation. Thank you for all your questions, chat room, Gmails, and all. Thank you so much. Forgive me for the mistakes that I have made on this program, and I have made many, but I'm still learning. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, and we hope to do better or better next week. Thank you.